Here's a story from Newsbeat. Should we rent out endangered species to one-percenters? Maybe. I'm Suzanne D., and you are listening to Newsbeat Radio. Koalas, charismatic and cuddly as they are not well equipped to deal with the threats of the modern world. The marsupials are maimed in large numbers by domesticated dogs, splattered in droves across Australia's country roads, and subjected to the slow, steady destruction of habitat that's made the continent home to almost half the mammalian extinctions of the modern era. That's why George Wilson, a conservationist, thinks the government should lease koalas and all threatened animals to private citizens. In a recent paper in the journal Conservation Letters, Wilson, an adjunct professor at the Australian National University who spent decades working for Australian state conservation agencies, proposes an experiment in which certain populations of endangered species would be moved from public areas where they're threatened and relocated to privately held lands with suitable habitats. Private lands could mean anything from golf courses to game reserves owned by businesses, philanthropists, or any stewardship group willing to protect the animals, Wilson says. Those landholders could then potentially leverage the animals as ecotourism opportunities. But why would anyone rent a pack of endangered species? Money, of course. Ecotourism is big business in Australia. Koala-related tourism alone generates at least $1.1 billion per year, according to the Australian Koala Foundation. Wilson knows the plan sounds a little nutty. Once you're in semi-retirement from the government, you can have a go at a few left-field ideas. And if you offend a few people, it's okay, he says. But the idea has gotten some serious attention. In October, Dick Smith, one of Australia's richest philanthropists and a prominent environmentalist, publicly came out in support of the idea. This is lateral thinking at its best, he told Australia National University. I support the initiative. Then, Australia's Threatened Species Commissioner told the Sydney Morning Herald in October that building partnerships with private sector institutions is essential to winning the fight against extinction. Tourists from around the world visit Australia to glimpse its unique wild animals like batongs, koalas, Tasmanian devils, and hairy-nosed wombats. On the whole, nature-based tourism attracts 3.3 million foreign visitors to the country and contributes $23 billion to the Australian economy each year, according to the country's Department of Environment and Energy. But the state, which technically owns the animals, has failed to protect endangered mammals, and it has mismanaged populations elsewhere, Wilson says. Koalas, for instance, one of the country's iconic creatures, are threatened in some areas, while overpopulated in others. There are so many in New South Wales, for instance, that the government has culled large numbers in recent years. Owning large numbers of tigers or lions may sound like something a Bond villain would do, but the privatization of wildlife has been successful in southern and eastern Africa. There, governments have a long history of letting individuals own animals, and big game reserves provide tens of thousands of acres of sensitive habitat while providing a profit motive to keep it intact. Wilson estimates that 10% of South Africa's land is in conservation due to private ownership of animals.